During the late 90s and early 2000s, many newer post-hardcore bands become heavier, often incorporating screaming and moving more into pop. They often cited bands like At the Drive-In, Cursive, and I Hate Myself as influence. One of the bands did, however, change the meaning of post-hardcore and revolutionized it into their music. They push their lyrical content discusses way more than depression and breakup, but more into addiction, politics, and the environment. They weren't as famous as My Chemical Romance, and they were a year earlier than the U's debut album, but they helped pave the way for post-hardcore and started a new era of emo. They even credited as their gateway to the genre. This is Thursday and how they become a well-known band in the post-hardcore scene. Thursday was formed in New Brunswick, New Jersey in 1998 by Tom Keeley and Tucker Rule. Tom and Tucker have known each other since they were in school together. During that time, they would play music on weekends to practice their instruments. A few months later, they met Jeff Rickley at the Inca Decker show. He suggests to him that he wants to become a vocalist for his band, and he agrees. Tim Payne and Bill Henderson also joined them, although Bill couldn't tour because of his school schedule, so they had Steve Padula. Bill was still a member of that band, and they would still play shows and record songs. They played their first shows on December 31st, 1998 at Wrigley Basement Show with other bands like Midtown, Saves the Day, and Poison the Well. What a killer lineup. After playing numerous shows, they recorded demos and released their EP in the summer of 1999 to build anticipation for their upcoming debut album. They signed to Eyeball Records and released their debut album, Waiting, in November 1999. This album is dark, like really dark. The theme of this album focuses on personal issues, politics, and their lives in their hometown. The first track, Porcelain, deals with Jeff's best friend Kevin's and going against the people for not checking any person's background information to buy guns. It's a lot sadder that Kevin wasn't aware of the hotline. Copies of the CD contain the message saying, "Handguns facilitate the impulse, making a reality for hundreds of people every year. Please boycott the stores that don't run proper background checks on handgun buyers. If you are thinking about know that you are not alone. There is help. 212-750-8400. In memory of Kevin." The 5th track, Streaks in the Sky, talks about leaving their hometown and starting a new life. The 7th track, Dying in New Brunswick, is about Jeff's girlfriend being while she was moving to New Brunswick. This made him hate his hometown even more because of the tragedy that happened to her. To this day, this is their darkest song, or even the darkest emo post-hardcore song they have ever written. I find it interesting that the last track on the album, Where the Circle Ends, is a spoken word, which honestly sounds like a lot dispute track. In 2000, Bill Henderson left the band, which was already replacing with Steve Padula. Thursday was trying to find their sound that would landmark not only the band itself, but the genre in general. In 2001, Thursday decided to sign to another label, Victory Records, which label was dominated by hardcore punk and metalcore bands, so they began recording their upcoming second album. On April 10, 2001, their second album, Full Collapse, was released. The album itself is far different from their first album, which used unclean vocals alongside clean vocals throughout each track, and they finally found their sound on this album. Many people claim that this was the start of the dirt wave of emo, though others argued that the Used, Salvation, or My Chemical Romance started afterwards. The guitar and drum were much different with more intensity and a lot more complex. Even Jeff's vocals show more emotion on this album, with his clean and unclean vocals coming to sadness. Understanding the Car Crash is about the aftermath of a car crash for the driver. This track also became their lead single, their most popular song, and received airplay on MTV2 and Views. Autobiography of a Nation is about the American invasion of other countries and how the news lies about the reasons why they're invading these countries. It was also ahead of its time since this came out several months before the US government declared a war on terror and the invasion of Iraq. Paris in Flames is about the LGBTQ+ neighborhood that were gentrified by larger corporations. Even the title itself is a reference to the 1999 documentary film Paris is Burning. Full Collapse was a minor success. It pushed boundaries not only of its sound, but also in the socio-political issues it addresses, which were unheard of in the post-hardcore or emo. This album helped shape Thursday into who they are today, and became one of the most essential post-hardcore albums of the 2000s. The relationship with 50 Records didn't last, as they left the label the same year. So, why did they leave the label? On their webpage they post about why they left. During the recording of Full Collapse, they wanted to make a booklet for their artwork, but the founder and owner of Victory Records, Tony, refused to let them do that. He stated that they should have kept a one-page insert because the lyrics are not important, but Thursday disagreed and decided to finish their booklet. Another reason was that Tony treated them as a joke and they were outnumbered by newer and smaller bands. Oh, and Tony was more into record sales and their success. They even told fans not to buy their EP, 5 Stories Fallen, since most of the tracks were live versions of Full Collapse, except for Chat Black New Year, which they asked fans to illegally download. Before they left Victory Records, Island Records has been coming to their shows and they knew they were facing the worst time, as they were getting less attention than other bands on the bill. Island asked them if they wanted to sign with us, and they agreed and signed with their label in 2002. They released their third album, War All The Time, in 2003. You might be thinking this album would be a political album because it was released during the Iraq War, or the War on Terror as a whole, but it's not about that. Jeff stated that this album title means love being in the war. Sure, they have some political lyrics, but it is a similar theme to Waiting, with some tracks in common. The sound of this album is different again. They took slight influence from bands like Radiohead and Fugazi. They also include Andrew Everdeen as their keyboardist, who didn't become a full-time member until after this album was released. For the workforce trying to discuss its slave labor and the waste of time spent working a 9-to-5 job. Signals Over the Air talks about sexuality that Jeff was facing because the whole male stereotypes didn't want to show love and emotion. This song is brought to you by A Falling Bomb is sort of a political track, but it's about how music will sound if they were founding war. War All The Time is a political track talking about members' childhood tragedy that were facing and how it still affects them to this day, since the terrorist attack in America back in 2001. It received positive reviews, although some fans were mixed about this album. Some love it for lyrical content and for bringing new material to their music, while others were disappointed by them selling out or by trying to be edgy, which I don't see how. Despite the mixed result, this album became another essential post-hardcore album several years later. The band was on hiatus, but they were still performing shows. In 2005, their 5 demo songs were leaked online when someone stole their tour's manager's iPod. Dursley released a statement expressing their disappointment at the leaking of their unfinished songs, but they were glad that people took an interest in their music. Dursley was working on their 4th album, which focused on making their songs longer and included a double album, but the project was scrapped. They were still working on a new album though. On May 2nd, 2006, Dursley released their album, A City by the Light Divided. This album is very much different from their last 3 albums. They lean more into alternative rock as the main focus, while still keeping their post-hardcore sound similar to rival schools. It barely contains any screen vocals on this album. A few tracks have some, but not many. The Other Side of the Crash, Over and Out of Control, explains Jeff's near death in the car crash, similar to Understanding the Car Crash. At this velocity is similar to the first track, but it's about the band almost dying in a plane accident. Running from the Rain is a tribute song to Kelvin Spencer, a 14-year-old boy who was run over by a train while walking near it and listening to his iPod. The album received mixed reviews, with fans believing that moving towards alternative rock was a great decision, while others dislike it for not being post-hardcore. In 2007, they left Island Records because they were no longer being promoted. Victory Records released their compilation album Kill the House Life, featuring new songs, live recordings, outtakes, and demos. Dursley met the Japanese screamo band Envy and released their split album in 2008. The album features 3 tracks from each of those bands and is amazing. That same year, they signed to Epitaph Records, which the band was privileged to be on the greater freedom it offered. On February 17, 2009, they released their 5th album, Common Existence.
There's this great trilogy of books that I read called the Illuminatus trilogy. I thought it was great because it takes kind of every punk rock kid's worst nightmares, that they're, everything they love is implicated in this grand conspiracy against humanity, and I wanted to update it.
It brought them back to their post-hardcore sound, had screen vocals, and made it heavier. Although they did get way less attention than during their Island Records era. It got worse. Many people saw only the opening acts during the tour rather than the main headliner. Once they were playing live, majority of the audience left the stage and called them, okay, this was in the 2000s. Alright, let's talk about the album. The album uses more indie rock and art rock elements. The tracks deal with issues like Last Call is about a marriage that will never last. As He Climbs a Dark Mountain, which is about missing your father. Time Zero, which is about physical abuse. And You Were the Cancer, which is about Jeff facing a stomach ache that he actually thought he was going to have stomach cancer due to the symptoms he was having. The album received mixed reviews from critics but was well received by audience. I believe it was because they were at the lowest point in their career and didn't receive much attention from fans. As I stated, many of the audience walked out after the opening acts band ended. After the album was released, they added a deluxe edition with 3 more tracks. Dursley began recording their new album in 2010. On April 12, 2011, Dursley released their 6th album, No Divulgación. This album featured more alternative and indie rock sound while still keeping their post-hardcore sound. They also include tons of subgenres such as post-rock, shoegaze, and gothic rock. It was largely inspired by other bands like My Bloody Valentine, Mogwai, and Silver Sun Pickups. The concept of this album is about devotion, but it had a lot to do with Jeff's personal life. Empty Glass deals with Jeff's divorce and his drug addiction that led to it. A Gun in the first act is about how religion is being divided for the people and how the symbol brainwashes them. Turnpike Divide is about Jeff returning to his hometown even though he doesn't want to. The last track, Stay True, is about the band Tucci and Mori wishing them well in the future and urging them not to make the same mistake as Jeff made throughout his career. The story goes that Jeff knows them because they used to go to his record store, collect records, and he wished them for the best. It's terrifying that this is the last track on this album, and that not many fans knew it would be their last album. The album was very well received by fans and critics for its raw sound, mature lyrics, perfectly balanced genres, and great atmosphere. A few months later, Thursday posted a statement on their website and Twitter announcing an indefinite hiatus. On January 16, 2013, Jeff Wrigley confirmed that Thursday has disbanded, while the other members worked in other bands.
And we all kind of felt also like under the circumstances that we decided to split, that booking a lot of other stuff after what we have commitments for already would have been, it wouldn't have been something that anybody wanted to do really at this point. But also we've always kind of been the kind of guys that like to honor the commitments that we've made, and so we were like, you know what, there's not a lot of acrimony, and you know, we really do love each other. It's just become impossible with a few things that have changed this year. It's kind of like a joy to get to play these last few shows together, you know, and really get to appreciate like our brothers. You know, we've been together for 13 years.
In early 2016, 4 members of Thursday posted pictures of themselves together, which sparked rumors of a reunion, but it didn't happen. Ironically, a few months later, Thursday announced they will reunite during the Wrecking Ball after show, and a year later, they will perform at many festivals. They stopped performing in 2019, then they reunited again in 2021. They dropped new songs in 2024 called Application for Release from the Dream, and it got even better when they dropped the second song, White Bikes, and the third, Taking Inventory of a Frozen Lake. So nowadays they're more similar to My Chemical Romance reunion, performing shows and releasing new songs, but no new albums have been released. Thursday has become one of the most influential bands in the post-hardcore scene, alongside Fugazi, At the Drive-In, and Glassjaw. Many future bands are carrying on the legacy and influence of Thursday like La Dispute and Tucci and Mori, which you should know about because they wrote a song about them. We know that Thursday isn't the first band to use unclean vocals in the post-hardcore genre. This can go to any bands that used it before Thursday, but it got their style very popular, helping airtime on TV and selling a lot of copies. Even though they were facing drama, addiction, and fights, they helped make their songs more emotional and unique with their style of music. It's no wonder that Thursday became essential to the post-hardcore genre and emo in general, although that would be controversial to call them an emo band. This was the story of Thursday. Hey, if you made it all the way to the end, I just want to say thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you next time.